Her mom convinced her, "You can marry Wealthier," and she listened. 2 years later, I'm the one who's wealthier in every way that matters. Now she's begging for a second chance she'll never get. Hey viewers, before we move on to the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want to see more stories like this. Thanks. Alright guys, I need to get this off my chest. It's been festering for a while, but after what happened last night, I think writing it down might finally cauterize the wound. It's a story about the woman I thought I'd marry, her status-obsessed mother, and the exact moment I realized I was just an entry-level boyfriend, a placeholder until a better model came along. To understand the ending, you have to understand the beginning. And the beginning, for us, was usually a dinner with her mother, Diane. Flashback to about 6 months before the end. We're at this nice Italian place, the kind with white tablecloths and waiters who look at you funny if you mispronounce gnocchi. We're celebrating our 3-year anniversary. I'd saved up for a month to pay for this. Rachel was beaming, her hand in mine under the table. For a second, it was perfect. Then Diane spoke. "This is lovely, Alex," she said, swirling her Pinot Noir. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. It never did. "It's so nice that you can afford places like this now." There it was. The little barb, expertly delivered. I felt Rachel's hand tense slightly in mine. I just nodded, my standard defense mechanism. "Thank you, Diane. The food's great." Diane ignored me, turning her laser focus to Rachel. "It reminds me of that little bistro in Napa, darling. Remember? The one the Stewart family took us to after the regatta." She let out a theatrical sigh. Now that was a meal. Michael Stewart just got his son a junior partnership, 24 years old. That's the kind of life you deserve, Rachel. A real legacy. I remember taking a long sip of water, the ice clinking loudly in the sudden silence. I looked at Rachel, waiting for her to defend me, to defend us, to tell her mother that the life we were building was the one she wanted. She just smiled weakly at her mom. "That was a fun trip," she said softly. "That was the first crack. I should have seen it then. But I was in love. I thought our bond was stronger than her mother's constant, dripping poison. I thought my love was enough to armor her against it. I was wrong." Fast forward to a Tuesday night. Just an ordinary Tuesday. I'd made spaghetti. We were supposed to watch the new episode of that baking show she loved. She was late coming home from her mom's place, which was happening more and more. When she finally walked in, her face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed. She hadn't been crying, exactly. She looked resolved. Like she'd just undergone a painful medical procedure and was now waiting for the anesthesia to wear off. "We need to talk," she said, her voice flat. My stomach dropped through the floor. Every guy knows that tone. It's never followed by, "I got a puppy," or "let's go to Bali." I just nodded and sat on our crappy IKEA sofa. She remained standing, pacing slightly, unable to look me in the eye. "Alex, I love you." "I do," she started, the words sounding rehearsed. "But love isn't enough, is it? It's not practical." "What's that supposed to mean?" I asked, though a cold part of me already knew. "My mom, she's helped me see things more clearly. Our future. Your potential." She spat the word out like it was a curse. "My potential?" I felt a hot flush of anger, but kept my voice calm. "Rachel, my review is in 2 months. The promotion is basically mine. We talked about this. We were going to start looking for a house next year." "Next year," she said, and there was a dismissive sharpness in her voice I'd never heard before. It was her mother's tone. "And then what? A 30-year mortgage on a 3-bedroom split level? 2 weeks in Florida for vacation every year? That's not a life, Alex. That's a schedule." I stared at her, bewildered. "That's what people do, Rachel. They build a life together. It takes time." "I don't have time," she snapped, finally stopping her pacing to look at me. The mask was off now. "I don't want to build. I want to arrive. My mother is right. I can't spend my life waiting for you to maybe, possibly, become the man I need you to be. I deserve to start at the finish line." The air went out of me. It was like being sucker punched. All those whispered conversations with her mother, all the helpful advice, had crystallized into this single, devastating verdict. I wasn't a partner. I was a project. And she decided the ROI wasn't worth it. "So what are you saying?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. She took a deep breath, straightening her shoulders. "I'm saying I think we want different things. I need a man who is already there, not one who's still on the journey." The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear the clock ticking in the kitchen. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator. I could hear the sound of my own future disintegrating. All the arguments I could have made flashed through my mind. The promises we'd made. The nights we'd spent talking about kids' names. I could have begged. I could have gotten angry. I could have listed every sacrifice I'd already made for her. But looking at her, at this stranger who'd been possessed by her mother's voice, I knew it would be wasted breath. She hadn't just rejected me. She'd rejected every version of the future I'd offered. She'd called our dreams boring. She'd called me inadequate. So I didn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just stood up, my movements slow and deliberate. I looked at the woman I thought I knew, and I felt nothing but a vast, empty calm. Okay, I said, my voice flat, final. If that's what you want. The confusion on her face was almost funny. She was braced for a fight, for tears, for negotiation. My quiet acceptance was a script she hadn't prepared for. It unnerved her more than any outburst could have. Alex, she started, but I was already walking toward the bedroom. I had packing to do. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't cry either. The shock was like a thick, soundproof blanket, smothering everything else. I just sat on the edge of the bed in the spare room, my room now, I guess, and stared at the wall. The numbness was a gift. It let me operate. The next 2 days were a blur of methodical, silent action. It was like I was a ghost haunting my own life. Rachel tried to talk to me a couple of times. The first morning, she came out of her bedroom, her eyes puffy. Alex, maybe we can, she began, her voice fragile, hoping for the emotional scene she'd been denied. I held up a hand. You were very clear, Rachel, I said, not even looking up from the box of books I was sealing shut. My voice was calm, flat, the voice of a customer service rep closing a ticket. There's nothing more to discuss. She flinched like I'd slapped her. My calmness was a weapon she didn't know how to fight. She retreated back into the bedroom. I called my boss, a gruff but decent guy named Frank. Family emergency. Need to take the rest of the week, I said. You all right, kid? He asked, genuine concern in his voice. I will be, I said, and I realized I meant it. I called my buddy, Mark, the one good friend who saw through Diane's bullshit from day one. I need your truck Saturday morning. And you're back. And no questions. Say less, he replied. I'll be there. Packing was an archaeological dig through a dead relationship. Every photo, every stupid souvenir from a day trip, every I love you note she'd left in my lunchbox felt like a relic from a civilization that had mysteriously vanished. I didn't keep a single one. I left them all in a neat pile on the kitchen counter for her. A museum of us. Admission was free. I was scrupulously fair. I took only what was unquestionably mine. I left the TV we'd gone halfsies on. I left the fancy kitchenware her mom had given us that I'd never liked. I even left the half-full container of my favorite coffee. I didn't want anything that would remind me of this place, this life, this version of myself she deemed unworthy. The final night, I slept on a sleeping bag on the floor. Rachel stayed in her room. The apartment was a tomb, the silence between us absolute and heavy. Saturday morning, Mark showed up right on time. He took one look at my face, at the stacks of boxes by the door, and just clapped a hand on my shoulder. Let's get you out of here, brother. We worked in silence, loading the truck. Rachel emerged once, wrapped in a robe, her face a mess of conflicting emotions, guilt, regret, defiance. She looked at Mark, who pointedly ignored her, and then at me. Where will you go? She asked, her voice small. I'll be fine, I said, hefting a box of my tools. It was the last thing I said to her in that apartment. It wasn't an answer. It was a dismissal. The last box loaded, I did one final walkthrough. I checked every drawer, every cupboard. I wasn't looking for things I'd missed. I was saying goodbye to the dreams I'd had here. The future kids running down the hall. The Christmas trees yet to be decorated. The lazy Sunday mornings that would never happen. I felt it all, a deep, aching hollow in my chest. Then I closed the door on it. I didn't leave a key. As Mark drove me to the cheap, short-term lease apartment I'd scrambled to find, the numbness began to wear off. The pain hit me like a physical blow. It wasn't just the loss of her. It was the humiliation, the sheer, utter disrespect. I had built my world around her, and she'd looked at the foundation and called it weak. You want to talk about it? Mark asked after 10 minutes of silence. What's to talk about? I said, staring out the window. I was a temporary investment. The dividends weren't high enough. She sold the stock. Mark whistled low. Cold man. Yeah. He glanced over. And the mom. The portfolio manager, I said. The analogy felt right. It drained the emotion out of it and made it just a bad business decision. She advised her client to divest. Mark laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. Jesus. So what now? Now? That was the question. The pain was there, a raw, open wound. But underneath it, something else was stirring. Something hard and cold. Now, I said, the words feeling true as I said them. I prove her wrong. The first week alone was the hardest. The silence in my new, empty apartment was deafening. I'd jump every time my phone buzzed, some pathetic, wounded part of me hoping it was her, saying it was all a terrible mistake. It never was. I heard things, though, through the grapevine. Mutual friends who didn't know the full story yet. The narrative was that Rachel and I had grown apart, that we wanted different things. A very clean, very bloodless coup. Then I heard the one that made the hollow in my chest turn to ice. Mark texted me a week later. Hey man, heard from Sarah. Rachel's seeing someone new. Some trust fund kid named Colin. Apparently Diane introduced them at a country club brunch like a week after you left. Sorry. I read the message 3 times. A week. It had taken a week for Diane to slot a new guy into the position she'd vacated for me. I didn't respond to Mark. I just put my phone down, walked into my barren kitchen, and made a coffee. I stood there, drinking it, staring at the blank white wall. Limited earning potential. The phrase echoed in my head, not as a wound anymore, but as a challenge. A diagnosis from a bad doctor. A faulty read on my metrics. That was the moment the pain finally solidified into something useful. Resolve. It wasn't rage. It wasn't a desire for revenge. Revenge would mean I was still tied to them, that my actions were still about them. This was different. This was for me. I logged into my work portal that night and volunteered for the projects no one else wanted. The ones that were complex, messy, and highly visible. I stopped thinking about work-life balance. My life was out of balance. So I'd pour everything into the work side. I spent my weekends not mourning, but learning. Online courses. Certifications. I sketched out ideas for a freelance consulting business I'd always toyed with, but never had the guts to pursue. I was no longer building a future for us. I was building a fortress. And every line of code I wrote, every client proposal I sent, every extra hour I logged, was another stone in the wall. A wall she, nor her mother, would ever see behind again. The love I had felt for Rachel didn't vanish. It just transformed. It became the fuel for my own ambition. The energy I'd once poured into planning our future, I now poured into building my own. I was alone. I was hurt. But for the first time in a long time, I was completely and utterly focused on myself. And it was terrifyingly peaceful. The year after Rachel was a grind. Pure fuel. I lived in my sparse apartment, a ghost, but a ghost with a purpose. I took the promotion at work. I started the freelance consulting business I'd always talked about. The first client was a friend of a friend. I undercharged and over-delivered. Word got around. The business grew. I raised my rates. People paid. I moved to a better apartment. I bought a good couch. I was building a life for one, and it was solid. I heard things, in bits and pieces. Rachel and the trust fund kid crashed and burned. He wasn't looking for anything real. I filed it away. Data, not drama. Then, a text from an old mutual friend, Sarah. Hey, heard about Rachel's family? I waited. Her dad's investments tanked. Bad. Like, losing their house bad. Full meltdown. Thought you should know. I stared at the message. The image of Diane, swirling her wine and preaching about real security, flashed in my mind. The irony was absolute. I typed back my only honest response. Thanks for the update. I wasn't happy. I wasn't sad. I was just done. Their disaster was their own. My peace was mine. The first text came 2 years later from a number I didn't know. Alex, it's Rachel. I heard you're doing well. Can we talk? I miss you. The tone was all wrong. She didn't miss me. She missed my stability. I deleted it. A week later, a voicemail. Diane's voice, strained and syrupy. Alex dear, we've had our differences, but family is family. We need your stability now. Call me. I deleted it. The audacity was almost impressive. Then, Rachel called. I answered out of morbid curiosity. She was sobbing, panicked. Alex please. We're losing everything. It was always you. I let the silence hang. I'm sorry to hear that. I said, my voice a flat, customer service dead end. She froze. What? That's it. Don't you care? That was a long time ago, I said, and hung up. I finally blocked the number. I thought it was over. I was at a charity gala with Clara, a woman whose quiet confidence made my old life feel like a poorly written play. Rachel found me. She looked tired, her smile nervous. Alex, you look well. Her eyes darted to Clara, a flash of bitter jealousy. Rachel, I acknowledged. Nothing more. Clara excused herself with a smile, the ultimate, unintentional power move. Who's that? Rachel asked. A friend. I wasn't explaining my life to her. She launched into her plea. I need help, Alex. My family, please. Coffee. For old time's sake. I looked at her, truly looked, and felt nothing. No anger. No pity. There is no old times, Rachel. I said, my voice calm and final. The man you're looking for? The stable one you could always fall back on? You were right. His potential was limited. You convinced him to become unlimited. So, thank you for that. Her hope died in her eyes. She understood. But I can't help you. Goodbye. I turned and walked back to Clara, who handed me a drink with a smile. I didn't look back. I knew she was still standing there, alone in the crowd, finally understanding the cost of her mother's advice. Her world was crumbling. Mine was rock solid, and she was no longer any part of it. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. What do you think about this story? Share it in the comments.